Hi educators, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video we are going to go through Behavior Guidance Approach, which every educator should know about, and I try to make it as easy, fun and engaging for you. This is not a full detailed webinar, so it's just a brief introduction of this approach that we need to be familiar with because it is current and the most modern approach that reflects findings of neuroscience and social and emotional development and learning. Let's start with a little bit of thinking. Behavior is how we act, speak, and treat people and objects in the environment. I want you to think of some examples of children's behavior that you find challenging. Post in the comments below. Also, what kind of challenging behavior have you experienced, and why do you think children displayed such behavior? We all need to start somewhere, and starting with the preconceived ideas is very important first step. Okay? So some examples that you might think of are temper tantrums, biting, kicking, acting in a defiant way towards adults and peers. For me, physical violence is probably one of the most difficult behaviors that are causing concern. Although there are some other destructive behaviors that are a little bit concerning, could be self-harm, but yeah, physical violence or verbal abuse would be probably the most difficult ones. To understand behavior, we all need to have a very good understanding of social emotional development. So all children may exhibit some types of disruptive behaviors, according to Kathy Walker, 2013. However, learning to behave in socially appropriate ways is part of children's growing process. It is part of social and emotional development, and we need to understand that the ability of children to regulate emotions and the behavior that follows it is acquired slowly over a long period of time. A lot of parents and inexperienced educators make a mistake thinking that behavior is something that children are born with, or they should be good children, well behaved. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Social and emotional development is a serious process that involves a development of brain architecture, and you can learn more about brain development and how it impacts child's behavior, child's social skills and emotional skills, also child's learning, because they're interconnected. But the most important term that you need to learn from this video, and I hope you will, is that behavior requires time. Behavior is a type of learning. So children are not born knowing how to behave. A lot of modeling, a lot of intentional teaching, a lot of guided participation, a lot of scaffolding required from adults, us educators and parents. So we really need to have good reasons in understanding behavior, what it is, understanding social emotional development, understanding self-regulation, understanding how children go through these stages and what impacts their behavior. So I hope you will learn more about it by yourself. Otherwise, definitely we'll make a lot more videos that are related to social and emotional learning. We also need to know what to expect from each stage of child development. As you know, I love Karen Karen's books, so you can check Karen Karen's book number 1, The Big Picture. There is a most current edition, so this one is previous, but you still will find it very helpful. If you don't have this book, you can always check the Developmental Milestones EYLF free resource that also gives you some ideas in terms of social and emotional development. It is very important to develop a good foundation for understanding how children develop their emotions and what to expect. For example, a lot of people who are inexperienced, they say sharing and scaring, or you need to share to a toddler. Is this developmentally appropriate? Post in the comments below what you think. Can we expect children to know how to share at the age of 1.5 or 2? Would they still be snatching toys? What do you think? So expectations are not for children in this regards, but for you as an educator. You need to know social, emotional, developmental skills. You need to know the key functions of the brain that I mentioned, such as executive control function, and understanding of what is self-regulation. So if you want to learn more about it, I recommend you to do the research and learn about it. It may be important to just refresh also the key skills and knowledge, especially skills that children learn as they grow. For example, for emotional development, I didn't cover it here, but you can learn from the developmental milestones and the key textbooks what are the key skills that children need to learn before they are 5. What are the social skills? For example, here is a list of pro-social skills, such as being fair, respecting individual rights, developing a sense of responsibility, showing empathy and being kind, taking turns, sharing, cooperating with others, problem solving, resolving conflicts. Now think about whether these skills are more likely to show in children who are teenagers or middle school children or toddlers. And if you think that toddlers can be kind, can take turn and share, the key here is consistency. Can they be fair, share, show empathy consistently, or sometimes they are not regulated and they are unable to do that? So are your expectations from toddlers, let's say, or even preschool children are too high? And that's what I talk about when I talk about expectations. Few theoretical perspectives that you need to be aware of. I left the link here about Bobo doll experiment, where Albert Bandura talks about how social learning is learning through observation. So children, when they observe parents or educators or any other significant others interacting with other children in a, well, let's say bad or not constructive way, they also display similar types of behavior. So watch this video about Bobo doll experiment and you will find out more about it. Erik Erikson is another theorist that we need to be aware of, and his ages and stages theory of crisis that each child and adult should go through, and it could be positive or negative outcome. For example, for babies, it is trust versus mistrust. And if you are looking after infants and babies, or even toddlers, and they went through this first stage, trust versus mistrust, and they came out as not trustful because of their family environment, because of their upbringing, because of their first year of life, where their needs were not met, they would show signs of difficult behavior and probably will take longer to develop this sense of belonging. They will be harder to soothe because they are not developed trust. They have not developed this trust. Same would be for toddlers who need a lot of independence, yes, or and not guilt or shame. And with all the children preschool age, initiative is the key. And instead of not letting children do things and telling them off for trying, we need to support this independence that is growing, but also with a lot of guidance. And that's why behavior guidance approach is called guidance. So Daniel Gartrell is one of my favorite books that I have in my library still. It's about behavior guidance. I also love to read Louis Porta. Louis Porta is an expert in behavior, of course. If you're in Australia and lucky to attend any of her professional development sessions, please do. You also can look up a lot of information about these approaches. So the key here is that we approach behavior as learning and we support children through all the stages of it. So there are a few types of behavior in this approach. Number one is disruptive behavior. So this could be anything from throwing toys and not picking up after yourself, or running through the area where children are working on a project, for example, building a tower or reading. As long as it's disruptive, yes, so and upsets other children but doesn't harm them, it's quite common in children. As I started this video with, almost all children display disruptive behavior from time to time. The second type of behavior is more concerning. It's called behavior of concern. So it may affect the child and cause concern for the educators. Now, most experts move towards deregulation or unregulated moment, yes, so in child's behavior. So, but we can call it behavior of concern because behavior is something we observe. For example, child who is withdrawing from communications, doesn't participate in social play, also is a behavior of concern child, like displaying the behavior of concern. But typical behavior of concern include self-harm, hitting other children, hurting educator, disagreeing but to the point of defiance when they become disruptive and destructive. Some strategies with disruptive behavior can include anything from ignoring to intervening, but it can be addressed with planning the environment anyway, because if you create really safe environment where everyone belongs, it is consistent, and there are routines that are working, then in this case children are more likely to behave because they know the routines, they are all predictable, they know the environment, and the environments also support this child's needs. For example, if child needs a little bit of quiet time, they can retreat to a quiet corner and not being bothered by other children. But if this opportunity is not given to a child, they might turn into disruptive behavior child. They also might start displaying behavior of concern based on what's happening at home or with their house or whatever is going on with regulation. So if the child came to the center unregulated and or dysregulated in the process, this can escalate into behavior of concern where they will become more aggressive or will act more violently towards others. So there are many possible reasons for behavior of concern which we need to know about. And one of the reasons that you can look at this Bronfenbrenner ecological theory diagram is microsystem. So anything that is very close to the child, but child herself can also be a factor, because some children are born with temperament that is quite fiery, feisty as well. Some children are slow to warm, some children are reserved. So all children may have difficult, easy, or kind of medium type of temperament. And family is another influencing factor. We also have stress, illness, disability, cultural and linguistically diverse background. Any change may impact behavior. For example, when children move from one country to another, from one school to another, from one early childhood center to another. Also, if there are changes in the family, again, as you can see here, Bronfenbrenner pretty much reflected it all. If father lost their job or mother is experiencing depression symptoms, the child's behavior will certainly change. Diet. From my experience as an early childhood educator, I can see correlation between high sugar intake and behavior. A lot of children who are diagnosed with ADHD or not diagnosed with ADHD, just children, also experiencing high glucose spike, and their behavior becomes much more disruptive and even threatening at times. So traumatic events like war, tsunami, abuse could also lead to behavior of concern or changes in regulation. So all this needs to be considered holistically. So you need to look at child ecological layers, all these microsystems, mesosystem, exosystem influences, and identify what are the factors that impacting this child's behavior. Possible reasons are also included that behavior can be caused by deregulation, but there might be underlying issues such as anxiety. It is more common these days. Depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, ADHD or ADD, oppositional defiance disorder, ODD. Developmental delays also may cause some issues with behavior, because behavior is also supported with communication skills, and if there is a language delay or developmental delay, child might not have ability to use words to communicate. Additional needs or neurodiversity, for example, autism spectrum disorder, may impact behavior significantly. It doesn't mean that it would be a behavior of concern, not necessarily, but highly likely it might be because of different ways of seeing the world, so neurodiverse way. You can watch some videos such as videos that are related to behavior that you need to be aware when children have autism, when they have ODD. ODD quite severely impacts behavior because it's defiance disorder. When child says no and don't and I won't. So, and ADHD definitely impacts the way child reacts and how they are regulated. So they are not really regulated and their reaction might be different as well. Mistaking behavior is another great term that I learned many years ago from the same approach, Gardner, which is a guidance approach. So, and the key here is that we don't really call behavior misbehavior, but we call it mistaken behavior. Why? Because most children need guidance in terms of their behavior, and they need regulation and they need to be co-regulated. So they all make mistakes in this process of learning. So think about if you are learning about something, and let's say driving, and you make mistakes. So you don't expect to be born with these skills, right? So you need to develop these skills under guidance, but you also will do a lot of mistakes. You will go through the process of trial and errors, right? And instead of punishment, we usually get guidance from our instructor when we learn to drive. So same refers to children behavior. They need a lot of repetition and a lot of guidance, a lot of different strategies, intentional teaching to learn the behavior. So Gardner gives example in their book on some mistaken behavior that you can observe. For example, if child is sticking their tongue out like at you like this, so they're probably experimenting. Or it could be socially influenced because their peer or friend is doing that. Highly likely it's not about strong needs, but you can see there are 3 motivational sources of why children behave this way. Number 1 is desire to explore the environment and engage in relationships and activities. Number 2, desire to please adults or peers and identify with the group of significant others. Quite often they're friends or cousins or older siblings, like older siblings. Also, it could be inability to cope with problems resulting from health conditions and all the underlying issues that I discussed. So it could be social factors, family factors, temperament, health, mental health issues. So, and you can see that each of these motivational sources will end up with different levels of mistaken behavior. For example, one could be experimentation. What's going to happen if I will throw this, let's say, sand at my friend or just in the air? What's gonna happen if I'll kick this box? Social influence behavior is typical when children, let's say, start running away from you and you ask them to come back inside, and they see that other children are running and they will do the same. So that's social influence. Swearing, smoking later on when they're teenagers also is socially influenced. Strong needs are probably the hardest type of mistaken behavior because it is obviously dictated by the strong needs, right? So, and we need to address the underlying conditions. So in any case, whatever the level of mistaken behavior is, you need to understand the motivational source or underlying issue. So this always goes back to us observing the child and interacting with child's family, child's educator, so gaining as much information as we can and then analyzing it. Case study. This is from Gardner book. I always read this case study to children. I'm not going to read it out loud because of YouTube rules, but you can read it. And basically it is a story about one teacher, pre-service teacher, who was on work placement and observed another child saying some explicit words. After the teacher comforted one child who was obviously swore at, this teacher whispered something to the child who was swearing. They said, "I'm proud of you." And that was a bit strange for this person because they didn't understand why they praised the behavior that wasn't any good. And the teacher smiled and said, until last week when he got upset, he would hit or kick, so use physical violence. So we've been teaching him to use his words instead. So you see, every child starts at different level of regulation. And at times what looks like a big, I would say, problem for some parents, for some children would be a big win because they started to use words instead of actions. And what you can see, the next step or goal is to teach different words that wouldn't bother people. And you see that in this case, the behavior of the child is highly likely dictated by the strong needs, maybe home violence, maybe witnessing home violence, highly likely, or even physical abuse, emotional abuse. And the language is inappropriate because of social learning, so observation of people who are older than this child and they are swearing. So again, this goes back to creating safe space for everyone, including children who misbehave. Personally, I find this really challenging because we are also teachers, we have emotions, and quite often we get worked up because the child is showing signs of mistaken behavior and they are not regulated. So they become unregulated, they become unruly, it's really hard to maintain balance. For example, during group time, they might start throwing things at you, they might interrupt, they might push other children, they might bite other children, and this way you really lose your calm. But safe and supportive environment is not just you, it's also creating these attachments with all other educators, not just you, but you of course as well. Meaningful, respectful relationships with family of the child, with the child themselves. Predictable, consistent environment, so where things are in the room. Also a lot of posters and a lot of reassurance in terms of behavior. The best rooms I visited that have received exceeding ratings, they do have these posters that talk about regulation, and they usually use some color-coded systems or images of what is okay behavior, what is not okay behavior, what we learn to do, what is expected from you. So all children, including children who are prone to mistaken behavior, we treat with dignity and respect. So that's all about EYLF and sense of belonging. The child who misbehaves may start feeling that they are a bit outcast. So I've seen this with inexperienced educators, and even experienced educators sometimes subconsciously promote that because of the behavior that is so strong that they cannot help themselves to like children. It's hard to make child likable by others when they are violent, but we need to give opportunities to these children to make choices. We also need to protect all children, and I think this goes back to inclusion and strong professional development that we can also do and keep developing our skills, because teaching is a skill and supporting children's behavior is one of our key duties of care. Environment that supports positive behavior. So this is a picture from Steiner classroom that I visited once. It's very beautiful, very calm and soothing. So you can see that it's the color can actually play a huge role in supporting calm behavior. So also check out Curiosity Approach that I follow for ages on Instagram. A really wonderful homey-like environment that is calm and child-appropriate equipment, resources that are interesting, and this is all accessible to children. Physical layout that stimulates learning but not overstimulates children. Well-maintained resources that are soothing, calm. So for example, blue, olive, so-called earth colors. Also play spaces that include opportunities for active play, outdoor areas and indoor areas, indoor gyms, running area outside, a lot of walks that you do with children as well, and indoor spaces for quiet play where children are separated by spaces such as shelves, carpet. So more on the environment you can read in the books of Carter. So I really like books designed for learning. I will talk about it later, but please look at learning environments and how you can create environments that are soothing. Few more strategies to support pro-social behavior. We need to work with families, of course. We need to arrange a lot of meetings and address any goals or work towards a behavior support plan if required. We also need to teach all children new skills, especially focusing on social and emotional learning. So strong social emotional learning, or SEL, is focus of many programs these days. So you can see that it is critical now. You can read about approaches such as have you filled your buckets, also other similar approaches that are teaching children to regulate their emotions. So you might also start with basic awareness training, which introduces emotions and help children to name them. One of the most important things is set clear limits or agreements. So you make agreements with children about what is expected. You reiterate it. You draw pictures. You talk about it during group times. You talk about it with children one-on-one. So it's a lot of modeling as well and discussions. Help children to understand the consequences of their behavior and spell it out for them. For example, when you threw the sand over here, you accidentally hit this child. You see they are now upset and confused because of that. Redirecting is one of the easiest strategies to apply to toddlers and younger children. Some behavior can be ignored, depend on whether it's harmful or not. Sometimes swearing could be ignored just to use the approach of B.F. Skinner or behaviorism, because if you are not supporting it, so it kind of goes away. But it works only with few types of behavior. At times when it's like, let's say, discrimination or hitting, physical violence, you have to intervene. Engaging children in resolving conflicts. Conflict resolution is one of the key skills that you will have to teach them or allow them to practice and facilitate. So this is when you will be using zone of proximal development by Lev Vygotsky, the concept that supports them to take the next step, and you're going to use a lot of scaffolding. So basically a good teacher will have a voice like me now, because you talk a lot and you teach children how to solve problems, how to resolve conflicts. It doesn't mean that you're always chatty. It means that you can do through guidance with gestures, but of course behavior is the key. You are a facilitator. Always follow through with any situation that you are like, oh my God, not again. When child approaches you and states that they've been hit by another child, or that children disinclude them, or someone pushed them, you need to follow through. I know it is hard, but it's something that you need to do, because this is a learning opportunity. Remember, every behavior is a learning opportunity for children. Few techniques as well that I learned over the first, I would say, 10 years and keep learning every single day, because they are so important. Number one, when child is not regulated, you can speak with a quiet tone of voice. So you need to keep your calm as much as possible. If you will become unregulated or dysregulated, the child will become even more dysregulated. Think of yourself as a rock, or like as a force that is providing this support, safe space. Yes, so where child's energy can be regulated. Quiet tone of voice is something that we need to practice. So mindfulness techniques for teachers, just working on your level of anxiety, sometimes drinking chamomile tea and having candles, like that's what I always do have, if they're safe, of course. Candles, nice essential oils, as long as children are not allergic, light. So all this works towards your calm and regulation and children's calm and regulation. Also, when we give children instructions about what we want them to do instead of what we don't want them to do, for example, you want them to sit with their feet on the floor, not on top of the chair or table, you lower volume and pitch of your voice. For example, can you please sit down, or put your feet on the ground? So this really achieves a lot. So try it and then let me know in the comments below if it worked. You always provide verbal assistance. You use pictures with children who might find it difficult to communicate, especially children from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. You move resources to change the environment to make it better, to allow this active play, and remove quiet play areas from active play. You move children away from another child sometimes when it's harmful and dangerous, right? You also repeat a lot when you give positive support. So you state what you want child to do. You explain as well. You get down at child's level. Always. You never yell across the room. You always come close to children who are fighting. You establish eye contact. You call them by names. And if you are a relief teacher, do it. The first thing you need to do is to learn children's names as soon as possible. You use report speech. For example, I can see children are fighting here, or I can see two children who are throwing blocks at each other. You also use positive language, so that's neuro-linguistic programming for you. For example, you reiterate, we speak quietly here inside, or we walk inside, we run outside. We use sand for building, not for throwing, etc. So it's a lot of phrases that you will use, but they need to be positive. Yes, so because this tells children what to do instead of what not to do. You might also find helpful this approach called pride. P. Praise the child by naming an appropriate behavior. For example, I can see you are helping to pack up all the toys. Reflect the child's statements when they're appropriate. For example, I build a tower. Yes, you build a high tower. And if it's about behavior, you can do the same. Imitate appropriate play. For example, if children are sharing, sitting and playing nicely, you can imitate it. Describe appropriate behavior. For example, I'm going to ask the boys if I can join their block play. Excuse me, Carter, can I join your block play? And of course, you maintain enthusiastic tone, so which is quite difficult throughout the day, but we need to do our best. Everyone knows about consequences approach, so it used to be quite common and it's still used to some extent. There are natural consequences and logical consequences. So we use them to help children to learn about the outcomes of their behavior. For example, if Sanjay refuses to wear a coat when it's raining, they might get wet. We use natural consequences only when it's not dangerous or harmful for children. For example, we cannot let them jump in the pool if they are toddlers and cannot swim. We cannot let them experience fire burn if they are young and don't know anything about fire safety. So in this case, we use logical consequences. So they are established by parents or guardians, educators, and they are direct, logical, not arbitrarily imposed. So it's not what you decide, it's something that you usually agree to impose, and they should be developmentally appropriate. Case in point, if you keep leaving your scooter in the driveway, So natural consequence would be that the car will run over it and it will get broken, or I will have to put it away. That's a logical consequence because you cannot look after your thing. So practice using natural and logical consequences. Maybe create a list of both and think about what kind of things you can do and apply to your practice. Some practical tasks. So a lot of centers use group rules. So I want you to approach it in a little bit different way, which I learned from one of my professional developmental sessions. You can think of agreements and discuss it with preschool age children. So what do they agree to do, let's say, in the room? For example, what are we expected to do with our toys? Yes, so what is our agreement? If we play with them, what do we do next? So wait for this discussion to happen and then invite children to also use texts and participate in drawing and creating these rules. Maybe add some pictures, photos, and children's explanations of things. Observing and assessing behavior. As I mentioned before, behavior of concern should be documented in order to be modified or eliminated. So we need to write observations, in other words. And we need to be objective when we do that. We also need to gather as much information as possible from the families. And we also need to write the meeting minutes down, because this helps to identify factors that impact behavior, strategies that work at home, strategies that work in the center. And we are usually using different types of observations, such as running record is probably the best, anecdotal record, sample video behavior recording. Yes, so I have quite a few. And also event sample, how often this event happens. For example, if child is biting, how often the attempts to bite happen. Behavior support plan is something that people write if behavior of concern is serious and needs to be addressed, and there are strategies that you're working towards. You may involve specialists in creating BSP or behavior support plan. Usually it is done in collaboration with other specialists, including agencies. And of course, it is a document, so you need to show it to all parties involved. And these days, it's also discussed with the child in terms of behavior, expectations, and strategies. So this is the brief introduction to guidance approach. So a little bit of homework. Have a look at some agencies that can support children who may have serious underlying issues, or some agencies and companies that address behavior. So I want you to have a look at wonderful programs and support resources that you can find and share in the comments below, so all our community can benefit from it. Finally, because Storykate is all about puppets, I want you to make puppets that can help children to learn about their emotions. If you will make your resource by yourself, even using paper puppets or stick puppets, share this with Storykate community, because I would love to see your work. You also may use puppets for social and emotional learning. Check my videos on that topic. Thank you for watching, and let me know what other topics would you like me to cover in my next or future videos. Thanks again. Bye for now.